The girls were right. That's what my wife said when she walked into our apartment at 9:12 on a Tuesday night. Coat still on, like she was already halfway out the door. But within 72 hours, she learned that a man who measures load-bearing capacity for a living knows exactly when a structure is about to fail, and he doesn't wait around to get crushed when it does. By the time she realized what she'd actually thrown away, I'd already drawn the line, set the deadline, and prepared the paperwork for a life where her chorus of divorced friends had zero vote in my future. Let me tell you how one borrowed opinion destroyed a 9-year marriage, because the way it ended is going to satisfy every part of you that's ever wanted to walk away with your self-respect, not just intact, but reinforced. I'm Oliver Bennett, 39, a structural engineer in San Antonio. I design load-bearing systems and calculate stress tolerances for commercial buildings. I work with things that need to support weight without failing. That Tuesday night, sitting at the kitchen table with elevation drawings and a red pen, half a mug of coffee going cold, I watched my wife drop her keys on the counter and deliver the sentence that told me our marriage had stopped bearing its load. The change hadn't arrived suddenly. It came in gradually, the way a crack propagates through concrete under constant pressure. 2 months earlier, Fridays turned into plans made without me, and Saturdays became late returns. Sundays meant sleeping past noon and wearing sunglasses inside the kitchen as if we suddenly needed protection from overhead lighting. When we occupied the same room, we didn't share the same conversation. The we that used to coordinate schedules became I and my group. She would hold her phone 6 inches from her face while I spoke, laugh at something on the screen, then tell me not to interpret it as rejection. It's just content. I'd ask if things were stable between us and get a shoulder movement designed to end the discussion. Our apartment started showing the shift in priorities. Dishes stayed in the sink. Laundry piled up. If I mentioned it, the word controlling came back as an accusation that proved itself if you tried to defend against it. She wore a different set of clothes now. Fitted dresses in colors she'd never chosen when we went out together. Lipstick that stained wine glasses she left for me to wash. Heels that struck the tile floor sharply at midnight and more quietly at 2 in the morning. The ring remained on her finger, but it had become decorative rather than meaningful. I didn't press her on it. I'm not someone who argues to establish dominance in minor disagreements. At work, we test materials. We measure deflection. We don't estimate. At home, I collected my own data points. The women, in her descriptions, expressed certainty about everything except their own situations. One had divorced twice and moved back to her mother's house. Another called herself perpetually single, as if it were a personal brand. The third moved between jobs and cities, measuring her weeks in stories about men who stopped responding. They formed a group that repeated the same ideas. Recently, my wife had started repeating those same ideas. She mentioned missing experiences, that marrying at 29 felt too early for a permanent arrangement. Freedom, they said. Adventure. The way she repeated those words told me she was testing how they sounded. Like advertising copy you want to accept because the presentation looks professional. Freedom from what? A vehicle with no loan payments. A roof that doesn't leak. A man who does what he says he'll do. I kept that observation to myself. Tonight, she brought in a perfume I didn't recognize. Sweet initially, with a stale undertone. She let the keys fall, leaned against the counter, and looked at me with practiced calm. I marked a note on a drawing, set the pen down parallel to the page edge, and met her eyes. They showed the false confidence you wear to avoid feeling the instability under your feet. The prepared speech came out in sections. We've grown apart. She needs to be herself. The women say marriage at our age is just a cage with better furniture. As if 9 years together were a purchase you could return without a receipt. Every line had a source I could identify. For months, she'd given me partial versions. Tonight, she delivered the complete version and waited to see if I'd accept it. I asked one question. What does listening look like in practice? Silence, then a shoulder movement. Space, another borrowed term, wide enough to accommodate a moving truck. She stood there like someone certain the decision had already been made in her favor. She wanted me to provide the rest. The objections, the pleading, the acknowledgement that I didn't measure up to a committee of women who toast their independence on someone else's credit card. I felt something become very still inside me. Like when you're on a construction site and the equipment operator stops mid-motion because he detects a change in sound. You can't see the void yet, but you know it exists. I watched her continue talking in circles to fill the quiet. I let her. Words cost nothing when the decision has already been made. There had been small private indicators even before tonight. I'd stopped replacing the second toothbrush when it wore out. I changed my emergency contact back to my brother without announcing it. I kept my gym bag in the vehicle instead of the closet. None of it was punishment. It was measuring the load on a structural member, making sounds indicating stress. She circled back to the women's lives as if they represented a destination rather than a warning. Happier now. That was the phrase. I suspected they were louder. That's not equivalent. I rinsed my mug and placed it in the drying rack. She wanted me to argue so she could confirm her assumptions about me. When I finally said I heard what she was telling me, she seemed almost disappointed. Outside, traffic moved on the highway. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor's appliance entered its spin cycle. Normal sounds in an apartment that didn't feel normal anymore. Foundations fail quietly before they fail loudly. Hairline cracks. Doors that bind in summer and never swing correctly again. You can keep applying surface treatments, or you can acknowledge the slab has moved. She removed her heels, crossed the room in bare feet, and stood over the table like the elevation view of a person I used to know. I should have paid attention to them sooner, she said more quietly now. I nodded once. A record of what was said in case documentation was needed later. Then I gathered the papers into a neat stack, slid the red pen into my shirt pocket, and looked at the ring on her hand, as if seeing a detail I'd missed on first review. Some changes you mark with ink. Others you mark by not arguing about them. Tonight, I did both. The apartment had that weekday quiet. The HVAC system cycling. Into that space, she delivered the next round. Freedom is worth more than comfort. The women had told her that. She repeated it like a line from a seminar. I let the sentence settle. Comfort, in my field, means a structure that remains standing during a storm. Freedom, the way she was using it, meant an exit she could take without looking back. She wanted me to beg. The performance required a counterweight. Raised voice. Slammed cabinet door. An apology I didn't know I owed. I gave her none of it. She tried again. Stories about their nights. Rooftops. A DJ with a name you had to shout to be heard. A married man who flirted and bought drinks because it's harmless fun. I listened like an auditor. Nothing in those stories suggested joy. It was volume disguised as happiness. Then came the smaller cuts. You've gotten boring. We never do anything fun. You've changed. I thought about the ways I'd changed. Fewer late nights, more morning runs. I traded the novelty of my 20s for a life that delivered what it promised. Boring resembles reliable when you stop grading on spectacle. She talked about starting over as if it were a challenge. I could start fresh, she said, and I wouldn't be the only single person in the group. There it was. Honest for once. She wanted to match a pattern. She discussed their divorces like a recreational activity. Not that difficult. Paperwork, a few emotional reactions, then brunch. Happier now. I asked the only question that mattered. Are you saying you want out? She stepped sideways. I'm just saying they have a point. No direct answer. Just a shape drawn in fog. She needed me to provide specifics so she could keep her role clean. She filled the pauses with more borrowed phrases. Finding myself. Refusing to settle. The words sounded like staging in a model home. Her tone stayed steady, but her eyes moved too often. First to my ring, then to the door. People who are certain don't rehearse. I remembered her in the first year we were married, when certainty looked like her laughing barefoot in our empty living room while we ate takeout from boxes because the furniture hadn't been delivered. No group input then. Just us building something we could both stand on. What she was performing now wasn't certainty. It was repetition. She was trying to convince herself as much as me. She changed approaches and painted our life with critical strokes. You plan everything. You like lists. You never just go. The implication was that spontaneity equals love. When I did speak, I used the same calm tone I reserve for contractors. What does go look like to you? She blinked, surprised I wasn't defending myself. Space. That word again. Space from what? I asked. From being judged. From the feeling that I have to answer to someone. There was the truth. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a witness who didn't get a vote. She threw in a test. The women say a man who really loves you fights for you. Fight who? I asked. Your friends? Your phone? A moving target with no rules? Love isn't a physical confrontation. It's a decision you make on quiet Tuesdays exactly like this one. She reached for leverage. Maybe I only chose you because it was the next thing to do. I nodded once to let the words be true if she needed them to be. She tried money next. A reference to how divorce wasn't as expensive as men made it sound. The women handled theirs fine. She staged a small scene, took off the ring and spun it once on the table, not quite releasing it, waiting to see if I'd grab it. I didn't touch it. The metal wobbled, ticked against the wood, and settled on its side. She put it back on with a shoulder movement meant to read as nonchalance. I noticed a hairline crack in her voice the third time. She said happier now. It happens on construction sites too. The third pass of a compactor. The tone shifts. You hear the truth of the soil. She wasn't sure. She wanted the social validation before accepting the personal cost. I rinsed my cup again, though it was already clean. I wouldn't be provoked, and I wouldn't be recruited to build her case. In my head, I started arranging furniture in an empty space. I pictured a closet where only my clothes hung, a key that didn't share a ring, a Sunday morning that didn't depend on anyone's mood. While she kept talking, I laid out a quiet sequence of steps. Order, not reaction. She tried nostalgia. Remember when we used to stay out until 2 and then sleep until noon? I remember, I said. I also remember the rent due Monday and the projects due Tuesday, and how we were still happy because we were pointed at the same future. She didn't have a rebuttal because it required naming a future she hadn't thought through. The women had given her slogans, not plans. By the end, she realized I wasn't going to supply the dramatic response she needed. She picked up her keys, then put them back down. You're really not going to say anything? I said enough. When she finally retreated down the hall, I stayed at the table and reopened the plans. The pressure had built gradually, then all at once. I felt clarified. The room didn't need more words. I stood, slid the red pin into my shirt pocket, and walked down the hall. The bedroom smelled like her perfume and my laundry detergent. Top drawer, right side. The small fireproof pouch with passports, titles, the copy of our deed. I just wanted to feel the zipper between my fingers and remind myself what responsibility feels like. Then I took off my ring, warm from my skin. A thin circle I'd never noticed until the day I decided to stop pretending it meant the same thing to both of us. I went back to the kitchen with it between 2 fingers. She watched me cross the room as if she wasn't sure whether I was about to apologize or explode. I set the ring on the table. Flat, not theatrical. You have 72 hours. I said it calmly. All in or all out. Not a feeling. A decision. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She tried to laugh. It came out thin. You're being dramatic. I shook my head. No, I'm being simple. I laid out terms. Clear, measurable, enforceable. If it's all in, then it's us, not a panel of friends. Couples counseling scheduled this week. Group chats on mute during dinner and after midnight. Passwords stay yours and mine stays mine. But secrets are not a category we keep. Weeknights aren't for rooftops. Weekends have a plan before Friday noon. If it's out, we do it with paperwork, not sabotage. She blinked fast when I said paperwork, as if the word carried a cost she hadn't calculated. The clock starts now, I said, checking the microwave. 9:12 p.m. Tuesday. She accused me of treating our marriage like a contract. I didn't correct her. Contracts are how you build things that hold. 72 hours. I repeated, and stepped aside so she could walk past me if she wanted to leave. She didn't. She stayed by the counter, arms folded, as if posture could stop time. In my office, I opened my laptop and sent 2 emails that had been drafts for weeks. The first to a family law firm I'd met with over lunch the previous Friday. Please prepare a petition for dissolution. Standard split. No fault. The second email went to our bank. Remove authorized user from my primary card. Reduce limit on the joint card to a number that covered groceries and utilities. I changed 2 streaming passwords and set my phone to do not disturb for anyone not named family. I didn't block her. I drew a boundary and respected it first. In the guest room, I pulled clean sheets from the linen closet and made the bed slowly and squarely. I placed a notepad on the nightstand and wrote 3 columns. In, out, undecided. Under in, I wrote the actions we'd take before Sunday. Counselor booked. Dinner with phones face down. A plan for the next 3 months. Under out, I wrote the first week's steps. Exchange of lists. Change of mailing address. Division of the storage unit. A meeting with a mediator. Under undecided, I wrote nothing. That was the point. When I came back to the kitchen, she had her arms wrapped around herself. You can't just issue deadlines, she said. I can. I answered. When the alternative is drifting while you take polls. She asked if I was threatening her. No. I'm offering clarity. She said the women said ultimatums are abusive. The women don't live here, I said. She asked if I was still going to sleep in our bed. No, I said. I don't sleep where the decisions aren't. I grabbed my keys and my gym bag and walked out. Down in the garage, I sat in the truck and breathed. Counted 10 slow seconds, then backed out like a man who has a map. I didn't drive far. 20 minutes on the highway, and I ended up in the same grocery store parking lot I pass every weekday. I parked under a dead light and called my brother. I told him I might need the spare room for a week if she chose out. He said the door code out loud once, then texted it. That's how men who mean it help. I bought coffee at the 24-hour place and drank it in a booth by the window. I watched the clock change to 10:03, 10:24, 10:58. My phone stayed dark. The decision belonged to her. The life that followed belonged to me. Back home, I moved my clothes to the guest room closet. One trip, I left her side of the bed untouched. I wrote a note. Short and neutral. 72 hours from 9:12 p.m. Tuesday. If in, say it, and we act. If out, say it, and we sign. If silence, I'll choose out for both of us. Friday at 9:12 p.m. I placed the note beside the ring. Then I took a picture of the clock and the note and the ring. Not for leverage. For record. Sleep came easy because I had finally put weight on the truth, and it held. Morning routines didn't change much. I brewed 2 mugs by muscle memory, then poured one down the sink when she left it full on the counter. I packed a simple lunch, texted my project manager that I'd be in late. At noon, I booked the counselor I'd found 3 weeks ago and sent her the appointment time. If in, I'll be there. At 2, the law firm replied with a draft petition attached. I forwarded it to my personal email and filed it under a folder named Slab. At 4, the bank confirmed the card changes. At 5, I texted my brother the word standing. He sent back a thumbs up. She tested the edges throughout the day. A selfie from a lunch spot with the women, captioned with some line about Queens. When I didn't react by sundown, the apartment felt like a place where air had been exchanged. She walked in quieter than the night before, eyes flicking to the ring and the note, then to me in the guest room doorway. You're serious, she said. I nodded. Serious is what you are when playtime ends. She wanted me to promise that picking in meant forgiveness without consequence. I told her it meant work with boundaries. When she went to shower, I stepped back into the kitchen and touched the ring once with my fingertip. A carpenter tapping a nail head to feel if it set. Then I turned off the overhead light and left the lamp on low. A small circle on wood. A clock face glowing green beside it. 72 hours is long when you don't know who you are without a group. It's short when you finally do. Night 1. She started with light taps on the wall between our rooms, like we were teenagers instead of adults standing in a life we built. Then came the texts. Can we talk? I didn't mean it like that. You're scaring me with this deadline. I didn't ignore her to be cruel. I let the ring and the note do the talking. I answered once. If you're in, say it and we act. If you're out, say it and we sign. I set my phone face down and slept like a man who finally believes the beam will hold because he measured it. Wednesday morning, she tried practical guilt. Coffee poured, cup slid toward me. This is childish, she said. I took the cup, thanked her, and asked if she wanted me to confirm the counseling appointment. She wanted a conversation instead. You're really doing this over something I said in a mood. I shook my head. No, I'm doing this because moods became policy. She tried to laugh. The women say deadlines are control tactics. I told her again. The women don't live here. By noon, the support group weighed in. One sent me a paragraph about how real men fight for their wives. Another sent a screenshot about liberation and growth. A third wrote something that started with as a woman and ended with you're threatened by her independence. I answered none of it. Silence is a hard floor. What I wasn't going to do was turn our marriage into a group project graded by people who never finished one. That afternoon, the card limit did its job. She texted from a brunch place. Did you cut the joint limit? It was embarrassing. I sent back the bank's number and told her I'd already covered the utilities. You're punishing me, she wrote. I said, I'm protecting both of us. If you pick in, the budget becomes ours again. If you pick out, I'm not funding your exit rehearsal. What came back was a photo of a mimosa and a caption about taking a breath. Signal for her friends. Not for me. Wednesday night, she shifted tactics. Lingerie from a drawer I hadn't opened in months. She hovered in the doorway like a question mark. "We don't have to be dramatic," she said. "We could just remember." I looked at her the way you look at a bridge someone decorated with lights to hide a crack. Desire is real. So is respect. If we're in, we'll remember in a counselor's office in a week of full days, not 10 minutes that postpones the decision. She held the pose a beat too long, then stepped away. I turned out the lamp and slept alone in a bed that finally felt honest. Thursday. The narrative widened. A mutual friend sent, "Everything okay with you too?" She posted something about choosing herself. I replied, "We're deciding." "I'm okay." Later that afternoon, her father called me. He asked if I was treating his daughter kindly. I said yes and told him exactly what I'd offered. 72 hours. Counseling if in. Paperwork if out. No smearing either way. He was quiet, then said, "Good. I'll talk to her." It mattered that someone in her life, who wasn't part of the group, heard a clean version of the facts. At 5, the law firm called to confirm receipt. "No rush," I said. The document was a tool, not a threat. On the drive home, I realized I'd started narrating my days without the plural. Not "we need groceries." Just "eggs and coffee are low." Small change. Big truth. When I walked in, the apartment smelled like perfume had been sprayed to erase the day. She'd cleaned. The fast kind where things are hidden, not handled. The ring still sat where I'd set it. The note had a crease across the middle. "I booked a table at that steak place you like," she said. Phone's away. I asked if she would cancel the women's Saturday plans and commit to counseling. The shoulders sagged a half-inch. Why does it have to be so formal? Because formality is how you keep a frame square when the weight comes on. Thursday night, the panic tremor came through. She stood in the hallway, hands tucked into the sleeves of a sweatshirt, hair undone, bare face. The version of her I met before the group. "If I say in, what do you need to hear?" she asked. It was almost a trick. I didn't give her a script to recite and resent. "Not here," I said. "Calendar invite for counseling. Saturday carved out for us. Group chat on mute after 9 p.m. A plan you write, not them." She nodded like she might try, then asked if I would hold off on telling anyone. "There's nothing to tell," I said. "We either act or we don't." The women didn't take the pause well. One sent her a flyer for a rooftop party Friday night. "You need this." She left it open on the counter. I put it under the ring. That earned me a long look. Part fury, part fear. She was starting to understand the social math. Rooftops are fun when you come home to something that holds. Less fun when home is the echo you hear after the music ends. Friday morning, hour 48. She tried the blame transfer. "You always pick work over me. This is why I need friends." I didn't defend a career that pays for the roof we're under. I said, "If we're in, we'll put it on the calendar. Your time. My time. Our time." She rolled her eyes. "The women say schedules kill romance." I shrugged. Romance died when respect did. That one landed. She left for a walk without her phone. First time in weeks. Midday. Her father texted me. Spoke to her. She's upset. Also, I'm not funding an apartment for space. You're handling this right. Around 3, the friend with the second divorce sent me another message, softer this time. I don't agree with how she's doing this. She's not hearing me. Hour 62. She came home with grocery bags. Garlic. Pasta. Fresh basil. The bottle of red we used to split before the rooftop era. She cooked. We ate at the table with the ring and the note pushed to the side. She talked about small things. A bird that nested on our balcony. A client who sent her a thank you card. It was almost normal. Almost. After dinner, she asked if I'd sit on the couch with her. I did. At the far cushion. The TV stayed off. The clock didn't. By hour 68, she tried confession. "I've been scared I'm boring," she said. The women make it sound like if you don't choose adventure, you disappear. I told her disappearing happens loud too. She asked if I thought she'd ruined it. I said, "You made a choice to listen to them. Now you can make a different choice." She bit her lip. "If I say in, will you ever trust me again?" I didn't sugarcoat it. Trust is rebuilt. It's not reset. If we're in, we start that work. She wanted yes with no terms. I don't sell what I can't deliver. Hour 70. The desperation finally came clean. Quiet. Like an apology whispered in an empty room. "I don't want to be alone," she said. "I don't want to end up like them." The irony was heavy. She'd used them to measure me. Now she was using me to measure them. What she didn't know was that the 72 hours had done their work on me too. I'd watched her cycle through guilt, seduction, blame, nostalgia, panic, and finally something that looked like truth. I'd also watched my own line hold. I hadn't raised my voice, threatened, or begged. I'd made a plan and kept it. At hour 71, she asked if she could sleep in our bed, just for tonight, to think with you close. I told her the guest room was made. If you're in, I said, you won't need to borrow closeness to make the decision. She went quiet. She looked at the ring, then at me, then at the door. She stood there in the small circle of lamplight with a face that finally looked like the version of her I might be able to trust again, if she chose it without a group. By then, I already knew what I would do at hour 72, no matter what came out of her mouth. Just the clean choice a man makes when he refuses to be negotiated down from respect. Hour 72 arrived without ceremony. The microwave digits rolled from 9:11 to 9:12 and kept going. I stood at the table where the ring had lived all week, slid a manila envelope beside it, and waited for her to join me. She came down the hall slowly, sweatshirt sleeves over her hands, hair still damp. I made my decision, I said. Calm. We're done. I turned the envelope so she could read the tab. Petition. Her eyes jumped from the word to my face, looking for anger. There wasn't any. Just the quiet that comes after you finally set down a weight you've been pretending wasn't heavy. She tried to get ahead of it. I was going to say in. I was going to text the counselor. I cooked. She stopped when she heard herself making a list of gestures instead of a commitment. Tears came. Not loud. Just there. Can we try? I shook my head once. You asked the room to vote on us. I'm not in that kind of marriage. I won't live inside a poll. She said I was throwing everything away over a bad week. I told her the week was the diagnosis, not the disease. Respect isn't a mood, I said. We didn't lose it last Tuesday. We just stopped pretending. I opened the envelope, slid the papers onto the table, and placed a pin above the signature line. No attorneys in the room. No posturing. We'll do the decent version, but we will do it. She went through the cycle faster. Blame, then nostalgia, then fear. She asked if there was anything she could say to change my mind. I told her there was only a history and a choice. You made yours, I said, and I've made mine. She flinched at the steadiness more than the words. Drama is easy to fight. Clarity is not. I gave her the guest room and the weekend to pack. I texted the law firm that we were proceeding and booked the mediator her father had recommended. I called the building manager and scheduled Monday morning for a lock change. In my inbox, I moved the counseling appointment into a folder named Undone. Saturday, her father came by with 2 boxes. We stood in the entry and he said what decent men say when they've watched a line get crossed too many times. I'm sorry. I told him I was taking my side back. The women tried to convert it into content. One posted a story about leaving controlling men. Another messaged me that I'd regret letting a good woman go. The third sent a single line. I hope you do what keeps your dignity. I didn't reply to any of them. We divided the easy things first. She took her winter coats, the jewelry box, the handmade mugs we bought in Sedona. I kept the tools. The dining table I refinished last fall. The picture frames I'd hung with a level. I asked about the couch. She shrugged. I kept it. The ring stayed on the table until noon Sunday, then went into a small padded envelope with her name on it. It was a promise we both broke in different ways. It belonged back with the person who couldn't carry it. By evening, she'd filled the trunk and the back seat. We stood in the garage where the compressor hums. She asked if we could stay friends. I told her, no, we can be civil. We can be fair, but I'm not staying available to someone who crowdsourced our marriage. She swallowed hard, nodded, then asked if I would at least text when the papers were filed. You'll get an email from the mediator, I said. We'll both get copies. She got in the car. She didn't look back until she reached the ramp. I didn't wave. I went upstairs and opened the windows and let the place air out. Monday came with the clean work. Bank forms. Address updates. A new password on the Wi-Fi. No chorus. I changed the emergency contact on my medical file to my brother, and the spare key moved to a small safe. I canceled the streaming services we never watched together. I stood in the bathroom and threw out the second toothbrush. Then I bought a new mug on the way to the office. White ceramic. Plain. People noticed. My project manager asked if I needed time. I told him I needed a good week of work. He nodded and handed me a site list that ran long. On Wednesday, a mutual friend texted a photo of the women at some rooftop, captioned "Stronger Together." I looked at the image and saw the tired in their eyes. You only notice when you've slept. I put my phone face down and walked the slab with a junior engineer, pointing out where the rebar chairs needed to rise another inch. This is what a life looks like when the frame is honest. You do the next right thing until the day feels like yours again. Her father called once more to say she'd moved into a co-worker's spare room and to ask if I was still okay to keep the apartment. I said yes. He thanked me for not making a mess. You don't come from mess, I said. Neither do I. The mediator filed. The signatures happened without ceremony. 2 adults made a choice, and a clerk stamped it. Sometimes I caught myself walking to the guest room out of habit. Habits fade when you replace them with other habits. I started running before sunrise again. The sky a flat gray that slowly takes color if you give it 20 quiet minutes. I booked a long weekend in Sedona for 3 months out. Alone. Not to reenact anything. Just to stand under a big sky and remember that scale is one of the languages I speak fluently. I moved my books back to the living room shelves. The ones that had been cleared for plants that died while we were busy elsewhere. Plants need tending. So do lives. She texted once, a week after the filing. I made a mistake. No punctuation. I read it and didn't answer for a day. The next morning, I replied with 2 words I could stand behind. Be well. She sent 3 dots, then nothing. I deleted the thread. I still run into pieces of us. The coffee place where the barista knows my name, but now only 1 order. The bench by the river trail where we once argued about nothing and then kissed like people who were sure. Those images pass through and out the other side. That's how you know you're not stuck. The picture doesn't ask you to live there. Men will tell you they fought for what mattered. I did too. I fought for the part of me that refuses to be measured by a committee. I set a boundary and enforced it. That's a kind of love you owe yourself before you owe it to anyone else. I didn't deliver a speech to her or to the world about what happened. People can hear tone even without the words. In time, the story made its way back to me in fragments. She moved again, farther out. The women are still meeting. The table's smaller now. The rooftop photos get fewer reactions. Maybe she's happy. Maybe she's not. It's not my ledger anymore. My apartment is quiet and clean and mine. The ring is gone. The note is in a folder with other finished things. I drink coffee from a plain white mug and read reports about soil that shifts if you don't build right. Respect is not a negotiation. It isn't something you coax out of someone or bribe with better nights. It's the ground you pour before you set the frame. When someone starts chiseling at it, you don't argue about every chip. You stop the chiseling. You backfill. You walk away if you have to. I did. And in the clean space after, when friends asked how I knew it was time, I gave them the only answer that matters. I stopped waiting to be chosen by a group. I chose myself. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.